In Creo Parametric 10.0, there is a new cabling tree that you get when you enter into the cabling environment, and it greatly helps users understand the nature of the wires and cables that they have routed. First, though, let's take a look at how things used to be in Creo Parametric 9.0 and earlier. Here I have an assembly open, it's got a skeleton, it's got a bunch of components, it's got a bunch of connectors, and I have my spools down at the bottom of the model tree, and we have our harness part with all the different routed items. I will go to Applications, Cabling, and the tree stays the same. If I expand my harness part, you can see all the different items that are in this harness. There are a bunch of locations, bundle segments, wires, I don't know, a whole bunch of stuff that is located in here that you can see. And it all appears in a flat view, and it can be difficult to understand. Yes, you can add different columns like designation to the model tree, but everything just appears right within the harness part. And so now that you see what people are used to, let's jump over to Creo Parametric 10.0. Here I am in the same assembly. I am in standard mode. Let's go to Applications and then Cabling. And what you'll notice is that immediately we get a split, just like you've seen in many other modes in Creo Parametric in previous versions. For example, if you go into simulation, or if you go into mechanisms, or if you go into ISDX, you get a split tree. We have our standard model tree down at the bottom, and we can see our different components, spools, and the harness part. And if I expand the harness part, it's just like before. I'm going to collapse the entire model tree so that we can see the cabling tree inside of the navigator. And there are three different modes for the cabling tree. The first mode that you get into by default, this is the cable view. And with the cable view, I'm going to use the expand all button so that you can see everything inside of here. So with the cable view, you can see things like your cables, wires, networks, and bundles. And if you expand the different junction boxes located in the cable tree, you will see information like the spools, and you can see the different segments and the locations for all the different objects. You have a filter that you can control what is displayed. And so for the cabling items, you can see that everything is displayed by default. These are all the different things that you can view. And of course, you can turn different items on and off. Let me cancel out of the filters. Next, I will go to the columns icon and add a couple columns that might be useful. So I routed this a few years ago in some demos using an XML file from Routed Systems Designer. Let me add in a couple columns for the logical from and logical to references. You see that there are other different choices in here like designation, diameter, and length. I will click the OK button, and we can adjust the size of the tree, and also you can adjust the size of the columns. But this allows me to see what the reference designators are for the different items to be routed from and to. So the cabling view helps you understand the nature and structure of the cable items that you have in your assembly. Let's change to the second option. This one is the bundle view. And when I go to the bundle view, let me collapse the default model tree again. We have the different bundles that are in the model. Once again, I will use the expand all button. And when we expand, we can see the contents of the various different bundles. And these include things like wires. You could also have cables, and you can also display the spools. If I go to my filter, you can see that two things are turned off by default: your spools and your locations. I'm going to turn on the display of the spools, and that way you can see the spool that was used to create some of the different bundles. And for one of my bundles here, you can see that it's been created, but it doesn't contain any actual wires or cables that have been added to the bundle so far. And the third view that you have for your new cable tree is the connectivity view. And when I go to the connectivity view, Once again, let me collapse the model tree. We can see all the different connectors that are located in the active harness. Beware, if you have more than one harness, it only shows the connectors for the active harness. And you can see all the different ones in here. Once again, I will go to expand all. And when I expand it, it shows the different wires that are routed in between the connectors from a given connector. So for example, if we take a look in here, we can see that we have between this part and this other part, there's wire 20. And then we can see the different ports, the different coordinate systems in those parts that were used for the routing. And it will also show you any logical references for wires that are not yet routed. In terms of the filters, you can see that you can display different things like bundles, conductors, wires, connectors, ports, reference designator labels, and terminators. Those are turned on by default. And also, just like before, we can go to the different columns, and we might want to add a column in this case for the designation. I'll click the OK button, and that way we can see the designations, the reference designators for the different connectors and what they're connected to and the different wires. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to show you. Let me go back to the bundle view. Maybe in the bundle view, you want to add a column for the diameter. And when I add that in here and then expand all, I can see the diameters of the individual bundles plus the diameters of the wires that are contained within those different bundles. So once again, lots of great information added to the cable tree in Creo Parametric 10.0 to help users understand what they've routed in their different cabling assemblies.